Throughout history, exorcisms have captured our imagination, featured in countless films and literature. But what happens when we move past fiction and examine cases that were actually documented? What do the records, recordings, and witness testimonies really tell us? Today, we investigate the exorcisms that left behind evidence. The line between the spiritual and the psychological has always been blurry. Medical science has evolved dramatically over the past century, yet some cases remain enigmatic. We're not here to prove or disprove the supernatural. Instead, we'll examine what was actually documented, what medical professionals observed, and what explanations science offers. Let's begin with one of the most famous documented cases of modern times. In 1949, a 14-year-old boy in Maryland became the subject of one of the most thoroughly witnessed exorcism procedures in American history. The case involved Catholic priests, medical doctors, and military personnel. Unlike many exorcism stories that fade into folklore, this one left behind official documentation, witness statements, and even a book published shortly after by one of the priests involved. The boy, referred to as Roland Doe in official records, displayed symptoms that baffled doctors. He allegedly levitated objects, spoke in languages he had never learned, and displayed knowledge of events unknown to him. The phenomena reportedly began after an incident with a Ouija board. His family brought him to multiple physicians who found no organic cause for his condition. His symptoms were documented as including violent behavior, aversion to religious objects, and what observers described as superhuman strength. What makes this case significant is that it wasn't conducted in secret. Military personnel were present. Priests documented their observations. A Jesuit priest named William Bowdern kept detailed notes throughout the exorcism, which lasted several months. Later, another priest, Thomas Allen, published an account titled Possessed, based on these notes and the official church records. The medical evaluations performed before the exorcism ruled out epilepsy, mental illness, and neurological disorders, based on the tests available at that time. However, modern analysis of this case suggests several important factors. The boy was at an age where adolescent crises and mental disturbances are common. He was deeply religious and lived in a deeply religious household. He had been traumatized by the sudden death of a beloved uncle. The specific symptoms he displayed, including the altered voice and violent outbursts, align closely with what modern psychology recognizes as conversion disorder or dissociative episodes. What observers in 1949 interpreted as supernatural phenomena can be understood through the lens of psychiatric trauma and psychological manifestation. Witnesses to the Maryland case reported that the boy scratched himself and marked his own body with symbols, though observers claimed this was done without access to instruments. Modern psychological understanding suggests that individuals experiencing severe trauma and dissociation can engage in self-harm without conscious awareness or memory of doing so. The scratches and marks documented in the case may well have been self-inflicted during moments when the boy was dissociated or under the influence of psychiatric disturbance rather than demonic influence. Moving forward in time, we encounter the case of Anneliese Michel in Germany, documented with even greater specificity. In 1976, a young woman underwent what was later determined to be an exorcism conducted by two Catholic priests. Unlike the Maryland case, Anneliese's ordeal was extensively documented through medical records, audio recordings, and later, a criminal trial. Anneliese Michel was born in 1952. By her late teens and early 20s, she began experiencing what she interpreted as demonic possession. She heard voices, experienced violent seizures, and claimed to be inhabited by multiple entities, including Adolf Hitler and Judas Iscariot. She underwent psychiatric treatment and was prescribed anticonvulsant medications. Her symptoms resembled epilepsy, but she refused to take her prescribed medications, believing them to conflict with her spiritual beliefs. Her parents, deeply religious, eventually sought permission from the local Catholic Church for an exorcism. Two priests, Father Arnold Renzinger and Father Ernst Alt, began performing the ritual in 1975. What happened next was recorded. The priests made audio recordings of 67 sessions between September 1975 and June 1976. These recordings, approximately 100 hours of material, became evidence in a later criminal investigation. The recordings reveal a young woman in severe distress. Her vocalizations change dramatically. She makes guttural sounds, speaks in voices described as masculine and aggressive, and makes statements purporting to be from demonic entities. However, they also reveal something else. The recordings show a woman who is malnourished, exhausted, and becoming increasingly physically compromised. Her family reported she was consuming very little food, sometimes only an apple per day. Analyzing the audio recordings with modern psychological understanding, experts have identified patterns consistent with dissociative episodes and psychiatric crisis rather than supernatural possession. The different voices she produced, while dramatic, are consistent with what modern psychiatry recognizes as dissociative identity disorder or complex dissociative episodes. Her claims of speaking in tongues and understanding languages she had not studied are significant, but linguistic experts who examined her speech found that what she produced did not match actual Latin or other languages in any verifiable way. In July 1976, Annalise Michel died. The cause was determined to be severe malnutrition and dehydration. An autopsy revealed that her body was severely depleted of essential nutrients. She died weighing only 88 pounds. A criminal investigation followed. The priests and Annalise's parents were charged with negligent manslaughter. The trial in 1978 revealed crucial details. Medical experts testified that Annalise had not been suffering from demonic possession, but from a combination of epilepsy, clinical depression, and likely dissociative identity disorder. Her psychological condition was documented. Her previous psychiatric treatment was presented as evidence. The trial revealed additional critical information. Annalise had a documented history of psychiatric illness before the exorcism began. She had made suicide attempts. She had experienced suicidal ideation. The exorcism, rather than treating her condition, actively worsened her mental and physical state. The priests were convicted and sentenced to 6 months' imprisonment. The case became a turning point in how the Catholic Church viewed exorcism and psychiatric illness. What the audio recordings actually documented was not a supernatural battle, but a psychological crisis that was allowed to progress without proper medical intervention. The case became pivotal because it demonstrated how religious interpretation of symptoms can delay or prevent necessary treatment. The recordings, meant to document divine intervention, instead became evidence of a medical crisis gone tragically wrong. Some who support the supernatural interpretation of her case point to specific details. Witnesses reported that during the exorcism, Annalise spoke languages she had not studied, including Latin. They claimed knowledge of hidden sins and private information. Some exorcists and theologians have argued that her case does show unexplained phenomena. Yet the criminal trial established clearly that what happened was a failure to provide adequate medical care to a young woman with treatable psychiatric conditions. Let's examine another case with substantial documentation. In 1971, in Germany again, the case of Clarita Villanueva was investigated by journalists and medical professionals. Clarita was a young Filipino woman who reportedly displayed stigmata, the spontaneous appearance of wounds resembling those of Christ's crucifixion. Her case drew attention from medical investigators. Clarita's phenomena were observed by priests, nuns, and medical personnel. Wounds appeared and bled on her hands, feet, and side. She claimed to experience visions. Medical doctors examined her. Some findings were genuinely puzzling to the doctors at the time. However, when rigorous investigation was conducted, including observation by skeptical medical professionals and journalists, issues emerged with the documentation. Some wounds appeared during unobserved periods. When closely monitored, the phenomena became less frequent. Some injuries showed signs of being self-inflicted or naturally caused. The case demonstrates how even medical observers can be influenced by expectation and by the persuasive narrative of the person experiencing the symptoms. Further investigation into the Villanueva case revealed that she had a history of self-harm behavior that was documented before the stigmata phenomena began. Psychological evaluation suggested she was experiencing severe emotional distress and was seeking attention and spiritual validation through the manifestation of stigmata symptoms. While the documented observations seemed mysterious to observers unfamiliar with the psychology of self-harm and factitious disorders, the explanation became clear when viewed through the lens of modern psychiatric understanding. Consider also the case that came to be known as the Demon House case in Indianapolis. In 2012, a family began experiencing phenomena they attributed to paranormal activity. They experienced scratches, objects moving, and heard voices. A documentary filmmaker began recording their experiences. However, when paranormal investigators and later law enforcement became involved, a different picture emerged. The family's behavior during unobserved moments contradicted their claims when they believed they were being observed. Closer examination revealed psychological distress, family dysfunction, and in some cases, deliberate staging. The case illustrates how documentation, when scrutinized carefully, often reveals human causes for phenomena initially attributed to external supernatural forces. The Demon House case is particularly instructive because it shows how selective documentation and selective observation can create an appearance of supernatural phenomena. When the family knew cameras were running, dramatic events would occur. When investigation turned to continuous uninterrupted observation with no performance aspect, the phenomena diminished significantly. This pattern suggests that psychological factors, including a desire for attention and validation, played a role in generating the reported phenomena. Now let's discuss what modern documentation reveals across multiple cases. When exorcisms are thoroughly documented with contemporary medical and psychiatric observation, several patterns emerge. First, nearly all individuals undergoing exorcisms are found to have either genuine psychiatric conditions or what are now recognized as culturally bound syndromes. Second, the symptoms that observers attribute to supernatural causes typically respond to proper psychiatric treatment. Third, when documentation is rigorous enough to rule out self-deception and suggestion, the rate of unexplained phenomena drops dramatically. The medical and psychiatric professions have established that conditions like dissociative identity disorder, conversion disorder, epilepsy with psychogenic features, and acute psychiatric crises can produce symptoms that appear supernatural to observers unfamiliar with these conditions. A person can genuinely believe they are possessed and genuinely experience altered consciousness, changed voice, and apparent behavioral changes, without any supernatural explanation being necessary. In conclusion, investigating the exorcisms that were actually documented reveals something important. It shows us the value of evidence, of medical examination, of rigorous observation. The documented cases have not provided proof of supernatural possession. Instead, they've provided evidence of the complexity of human psychology, the power of belief, and the importance of not letting religious conviction or tradition prevent proper medical care. The historical record of documented exorcisms is ultimately a record of how medical understanding has advanced, and how proper investigation clarifies what once seemed mysterious.